She wasn't just the voice behind some of the biggest R&B ballads of the 90s. She was the backbone of an entire family while fans saw glitz, Grammys, and chart-topping records. Behind closed doors, Toni Braxton was quietly falling apart: financial collapse, chronic illness, family betrayal, and at the center of it all, a woman expected to carry everyone, even when she could barely carry herself. But how does someone who sold over 70 million records end up filing for bankruptcy twice? Why did she call out her own sisters on national TV? And what really happened behind the scenes of the Braxton empire? This isn't just a story about success, it's about sacrifice. And what it truly costs to be the one everybody counts on, before the fame, before the fortune. There was just a girl named Toni trying to survive in a household of 6 kids. And to overwhelmed parents, when Toni was barely 14, her life changed overnight. Her mother suffered a devastating back injury, leaving her hospitalized for weeks. With their father working non-stop to make ends meet, the responsibility of raising her younger siblings fell squarely on Toni's shoulders. She wasn't just a big sister, she became a stand-in parent. And that sense of duty never left her. Years later, her sister Tracy would remind her, "Toni, when you make it, you can help us all." And she did. She made it big. But the pressure that came with it? It was crushing. For years, Toni never said a word about the weight she carried. But once the cameras started rolling on Braxton family values, the cracks began to show. In private, she felt suffocated. In public, she stayed silent. Until one day, she didn't, and what she said would flip the entire narrative about the Braxton sisters. But that was only the beginning. Toni Braxton didn't just break into the music industry, she exploded. Her debut solo album in 1993 didn't just go platinum, it sold 10 million copies worldwide. With hits like Another Sad Love Song and Breathe Again. She climbed to the top of the Billboard 200 and never looked back. Her follow-up album, Secrets, only solidified her as an R&B powerhouse. That's where Unbreak My Heart was born, a track that would become one of the best-selling singles of all time. That one song alone moved 10 million copies across the globe. With 7 Grammys and over 70 million albums sold, Toni was and still is one of the most successful female R&B artists in history. But while her career was soaring, her reality was far more complicated. Behind the awards and flashing lights, Toni wasn't just managing fame, she was financially supporting her entire family. From covering medical bills to buying cars and keeping the lights on, Toni became the unofficial bank of the Braxtons. She paid for everything, and everyone expected her to. She once said that if she hadn't been burdened with so much responsibility, she could have soared even higher. But the success came with a price, and the bill would come due faster than anyone expected. And the next blow? It wouldn't come from the industry, it would come from inside her own home. For Toni Braxton, loyalty to family wasn't a choice, it was an unspoken contract. And no matter how much she gave, it was never enough. While she was out performing to sold-out crowds and recording chart-topping albums back home, the bills didn't stop coming. Her mom's car insurance, her siblings' living expenses, emergencies that only Toni seemed responsible for. And here's what stung the most: out of all her sisters, only Tamar ever stepped up to help. Even before Tamar had money of her own, she was pitching in where she could. The others? According to Toni, they stayed silent. The assumption was always the same: Toni's got it. But the tension didn't stop there. When it came time to perform together, Trina and Tawanda charged Toni for their appearances. Tamar, the one helping out with bills, never asked for a dime. Meanwhile, Trina and Tawanda were demanding checks, even when they weren't pulling their weight financially. Toni said it best: "I just wish every situation wasn't about Toni's savings and loans." And what hurt most was the double standard. She wasn't just expected to carry the family. She was expected to pay them to stand beside her. The lines between love, duty, and exploitation were starting to blur. And just when she thought things couldn't get more unfair, she realized she was being robbed in more ways than one. With over $170 million in record sales under her belt, Toni Braxton should have been set for life. But behind the platinum records was a financial nightmare that no one saw coming. Despite her massive success, Toni was making less than 35 cents per album sold. That's not a typo. She was generating millions for everyone but herself. Turns out, her contract with Arista and La Facci Records was a trap. She had to reimburse the label for almost everything: studio time, clothes, travel, even music videos. So instead of cashing in, she was owing money. In 1998, just 8 weeks after suing her label for unfair treatment, Toni filed for bankruptcy for the first time. She revealed that after all was said and done, she'd earned less than $2,000 in royalties total. And the situation only got messier. At one point, she was accused of trying to secretly transfer over $50,000 to her then-husband to shield it from creditors, a move that raised red flags and made headlines. Then came the interview that was supposed to give her a voice, but instead, it nearly destroyed her reputation because what happened on Oprah's stage wasn't just an interview, it was a public shaming. In the midst of her financial collapse, Toni Braxton turned to someone she admired, Oprah Winfrey. She agreed to sit down for what she hoped would be a sympathetic interview, a chance to tell her side, to explain how she had been chewed up by the system and how the label she made rich had left her broke. But what she got was something else entirely. From the moment Toni sat down, she could feel the judgment. She later recalled how Oprah, without hesitation, asked her, "I hear you have Gucci flatware. I'm Oprah Winfrey and I don't even have Gucci flatware." It wasn't just condescending. It was crushing. Toni said she felt like a child being scolded. She admired Oprah, looked up to her. But in that moment, she said, "She made me feel this big." And it didn't stop there. According to industry insiders, Oprah had actually called LaFaci Records before the interview aired, warning them that Toni was planning to speak out. Some say it was Oprah's way of staying on good terms with the label. Others say it was straight-up sabotage. Either way, Toni's attempt to reclaim her narrative had backfired. Public perception shifted, and not in her favor. The woman who sang "Unbreak My Heart" was now seen as irresponsible, reckless with money, and ungrateful. But the truth was far more complicated, and her next battle wasn't just with bad press, it was with her own body, because what came next was the fight of her life. Just when Toni Braxton thought things couldn't get worse, her body gave out on her. In 2008, she was diagnosed with microvascular angina, a serious heart condition that causes intense chest pain. But that was just the beginning. Not long after, doctors delivered another blow: lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease with no cure. It hit her like a freight train. She was in the middle of a multi-million-dollar residency in Las Vegas, one that had taken months of preparation and enormous personal investment. But her health forced her to cancel the show, and the insurance that was supposed to cover the costs didn't come through. Suddenly, Toni was left holding the bag. She had to pay back everything out of pocket: lighting, stage setup, band salaries, hotel rooms. Fans only see the spotlight. They don't see that the artist pays for every detail of the show. That one cancellation cost her a fortune, and by 2010, Toni Braxton was filing for bankruptcy again. But this time, it wasn't about bad contracts or greedy labels, it was about survival. She was sick, broke, and still trying to keep everyone else afloat. The headlines didn't care about the nuance. They just saw a millionaire who filed twice, and as if that wasn't enough, the IRS was about to come knocking. By 2019, Toni Braxton had already weathered to bankruptcies, a chronic illness, and years of family tension, but the hits kept coming, this time from the government. In December of that year, the IRS slapped her with a federal tax lien from more than $340, zero in unpaid taxes from 2017. Just days later, the California Franchise Tax Board followed with their own lien, tacking on another $116,000 in state taxes owed. In total, nearly $500,000 in back taxes, and once again, the rumors started to swirl. Was it mismanagement? Carelessness? Or was there something deeper, something more painful? People began pointing fingers at the one factor that always seemed to be present: her family. The same family she had supported for decades. While Toni was being drained by medical bills and fighting for her health, she was also footing bills for everyone else. Even the Braxton family values production reportedly stalled over yet another fight about money, with Toni walking off set and saying she was done, and somewhere in the chaos, a heartbreaking promise was broken. Before her sister Tracy passed, they all vowed to get along, to bury the drama once and for all. But instead, things only got worse. And the family bond that had once been Toni's strength was now tearing her apart. The Braxton family wasn't just feuding behind closed doors, it was spilling out onto the internet. Tamar, once seen as Toni's closest ally, started unraveling publicly. In a series of now-deleted posts, she blasted her family, calling them toxic and admitting she was heading back into treatment. Her words were raw: "I just pray that my marriage can be saved and my life can be spared." She didn't hold back: "My family is awful," and in one final jab, she announced she should have never returned to Braxton family values, but the silence between sisters may have been louder than the words. On Toni's birthday, she tried to tag Tamar in a post, only to realize she had been blocked. Instead of anger, Toni posted, "I wanted to repost that gorgeous picture of you, but I'm blocked again. Anyway, happy birthday, Tay." Tamar clapped back, accusing Toni of gaslighting and saying she could have just picked up the phone. Screenshots followed, text threads, subtle shade, public confusion, and all of it pointed to one undeniable truth: the family was fractured. Even at Tawanda's wedding, where Toni and Trina showed up as bridesmaids, Tamar was noticeably absent. The bond that once made the Braxtons so powerful on screen was now reduced to cryptic posts and cold shoulders, and in all the noise, Toni, the voice of strength, had quietly begun to fade into the background for decades. Toni Braxton was more than just a superstar. She was the glue, the provider, the protector, the peacekeeper, and the price? It nearly broke her. She gave her voice to the world and her paycheck to her family. While fans sang along to her heartbreak anthems, few knew she was living one behind the scenes. In silence, in sacrifice, in solitude. She survived contracts that robbed her, interviews that humiliated her, illnesses that tried to silence her, and a family dynamic that never gave her room to rest. And yet, through it all, she stayed loyal, stayed generous, stayed Toni. But even loyalty has a limit. And for a woman who carried everyone for so long, the question now is, who ever carried her? Some say her family drained her, others believe the industry chewed her up and left her behind. And there are those who wonder if the emotional toll of always being the strong one played a role. In her health struggles, maybe it was all of it. Maybe it was none, but one thing's for sure. Behind the 7 Grammys and the gold records is a woman who gave everything, and was often left with nothing.